here over at Crafty and Chaos with part 1 in our new series of videos which shows how to make additional elements for our Brother Scan and Cut canvas workspace for our floral stencil digital stamp style cards. So this is the first part and we'll see how far we get. And I've just left some of the parts of the old file on my desk so that I can just follow along, so that because there is quite a lot to do, and it's easier if I've got everything in front of me so that I don't sort of forget to do something. So these are all just older parts of the file, if you will. So I'm going to start from scratch, but I'm just going to drag all my aid memoirs, if you will, off to the side, and then we can get cracking with today's installment. So the first thing we need to do is locate the stencil that we're going to use, or rather the image that we're going to use. And actually all of this file comes from one particular font, and it's actually the DT font, and it's the capital letter N. So when we go on that, you can see we've now got the capital letter N, and the problem we've got is at the moment it's seeing it in here as text, and it will neither let me ungroup it, so it hits here, see we're selected on that, it will neither let me ungroup it, nor if I go on the edit will it let me divide and break it apart. Okay, and because it's seeing it as text, it's not even going to expose the nodes, it's just going to keep bringing up, when I double click to expose the nodes, it will just bring the text box back up to say, well, what letter do you want then? So clearly that's not going to work. This is when I had a thought. I've still got the Brother type converter, and the type converter saves the file as an FCM. So we're still using that DT flowers, which I got from the font. I typed in DT flower, press search, and this is the one that comes up, and you download it and save to your drive and install the font in your normal way, whichever that would be for your machine. I only know how to do it on a MacBook, but I'm sure there are lots of videos to show you online and YouTube how to do it on a Windows-based machine. So I've gone onto the same font and I want a capital letter N. And I'll just preview it to prove to you that that is exactly the same file, and click close. Now you'd go on to save it somewhere where you'd know where it was. I saved mine to my desktop. I'm not going to save it again because I've already saved it. So then we're not doing text now, we need to import an SVG, and I want Canvas New Stamp Stencil FCM, that's what I called it, so that I'd be able to find it. Now when I drag that out, I can now see that I can ungroup it, so all of the parts are now separate. And this particular version of the file has an outline at the back you can just drag off, and that will create shortly our simplistic stencil, if you will. Now, the next thing to do is to bring on a square shape, and we're just going to close that down. Now we're going to come back to the square shortly, and I'm just going to leave it off to the side because we're going to need a few squares as we are going forward. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on the file. I'm just going to click off now so I can see what we've got. And what I did first of all was to tidy up the file a little bit. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more because some of these little tiny pieces are going to be quite problematic for your blade. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around selecting the really tiny parts, and I'm just doing a backspace to delete them. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom out a little way to make sure we've got all of the parts that I wanted to eliminate. Now, what we've got here now is the starts of our more complicated stencil, if you will, detailed stencil, and also our drawing file. So I'm going to display, zoom all objects to the mat, and then I'm just going to zoom in a little bit on the mat so you can see what's happening next. So the next thing I'm going to do is group everything together, and Command and D on my MacBook is the duplicate that I've actually formed for my MacBook because it didn't have a shortcut for duplicate, and I was so used to using a shortcut in the Canvas Online version that it was driving me insane not being able to do it. But you could right click and duplicate that way. So what I've got now is 1, 2, exactly the same. I'm going to make this one a drawing file, and that is now effectively our and I'm just going to flood it with colour so you can see. This is effectively now our drawing file. Let's make it some realistic colours, so we'll have it so it looks pretty. So I'm just going to break it apart now, and I'll give it some ungroup it. And I just find that this helped me a little bit with the position and knowing what I was doing later. So I'm just going to make the leaves green, just because I can. So I'm doing the leaves green, like so, what I perceive to be leaves. And I think we're more or less there with that. And maybe this part here could be the tip of a leaf. Okay, now the bit in the middle, I'm assuming that that's a stalk and that that's a stalk, and then that the other bits are little bits that are cut out that I'm going to cut out of the stencil. So I'm going to leave them in this file, but I'm actually going to remove them from this one. So they're going to be little gaps in the file, if you will. So I'm just going to delete that, and that's where I'm up to with my drawing file. So I just need to select everything, make sure it is draw. Then I'm going to, oh, I've got another one there, so I'm just going to delete that one. So that's the file as is. So I'm just going round and I'm going to select each of the petals like so, just so that this is just for my benefit really. You can either choose to do this or not. And all I'm going to do once I've done this is take the opacity down so it's not as bright, because it was driving me mad being so bright. And it also now shows me that I'm going to be getting rid of this one, and this one also. So now I've got some files and I've got some gaps in between the files. So I'm now going to group everything back together in that drawing file. Now obviously these colours are just for my benefit, and it just helps me to keep an idea on where I'm up to. So that is my now drawing file, and that one that was a perfect outline for it is what we would use to cut out. So if we wanted to get the scan and cut to draw that, we would then align it perfectly. So by lining it up centrally and vertically, and then we would send that across to the Brother Scan and Cut. That we could draw and we could cut it out, and I will and that's the end of part 1. I'll get back to you with part 2. Okay, so what we've effectively created now is our drawing file. So obviously it wouldn't draw it coloured, it would draw it just as is with a drawing line, but you could get it to draw it onto a piece of card, get your machine to cut it out at the same time. So you'd load them in together, you'd load both of these pieces in your machine together, send them over to your scan and cut together so that they're perfectly aligned. Personally, I would get it to draw first, in either, dependent on the medium that you're wanting to do. If you're watercolouring it, I suggest you use the little Brother pens. I either use the black or the brown one for that, and that means that you can then watercolour. Sorry, then you can use your Copic markers, your Pro markers, and your Spectrum Noirs. Or if you're wanting to do watercolours, I suggest you use the Sharpie Ultra Fine tip in either the black or the brown, whichever you prefer, or any other colour that you want to do. And then you'd colour the images in your preferred medium, and I'd get it to cut it out before you did that, because I'd just get it to draw first, then cut it out, then do your colouring in, mount it on your card, here presto, you're done. So this is the file that we've got that's complete with all the bits that I've just deleted, because I'm going to use them later to make the plate that we can have as a slightly sort of left-in cardstock sort of a feel. So that's where we're up to. So we've got a drawing line and we've got this. So we'll do now the less detailed stencil, if you will. So what we need for that is this outline here is a perfect fit for that. So we need to make a duplicate of that by right clicking and duplicating, or if you have a shortcut key, use it. And then we need to bring on a square, and I'm going to duplicate that so that I can put it off to the side for when I need it again. And then I'm just going to make this square fit right round the file. So I'm going to make it up. I'm going to click on and drag it down so it's longer, and then I'm just going to select both, and I'm going to line them up centrally and vertically, and then I'm going to make sure that that square is arranged to the back, and then I'm going to select both and hopefully get it to punch out for us. Now this is that E92001 error again, which means that somewhere in this detail in this file, not the square, the other one that's underneath, has got again a crossed path. So what we need to do, we're going to zoom in onto this particular part of the file, and we're just going to have a look at the nodes where they're positioned, and we can see straight away that there's definitely some congestion there. So I'm just going along that area of the file and just carefully removing some of the nodes. So I'm just clicking on them, and if you get a drastic change in the shape, just go undo. But what I'm trying to do is, where they're all stacked up here and causing us a problem, I'm just trying to get rid. And if you accidentally click on, you don't select one. See, now that's giving us that one for a line. We don't want that one, so we'll click another one there. Get rid of that one. So we're just getting rid of where all these nodes are congested in this particular area, because it might be that part that is actually stopping us from being able to cut it out. So now I'm just going to have a look elsewhere. Again, there's a little bit of congestion there, but I wouldn't have thought that would have been causing a massive problem. But we'll take out the extra node. This all looks okay. This looks a little bit congested there, so I'll just take a little bit out there and possibly just move that a tad up so it's just not quite as close. And remember, this has got a bit of an offset on it, so that it's not going to adjust that drastically, that you're going to change the shape so it's unrecognisable. So I'm just getting rid of some of these nodes that may be causing the issue. Now we're going to leave that at that, and we'll just take one more look down here, because again we've got quite a few congested nodes on this corner here. So I'm just clicking, selecting and minusing up here, being mindful that I don't want to change the shape too much. So if it does change drastically, then I will undo, and I just think we could go one more there, not that one. It's kind of want the one behind that one if we can get it. We'll leave it at that and we'll see. So we're just going to display fit to map, and if it's not quite worked this time, it's not a problem. We can always have another look back in and see if there's any other nodes that we need to get rid of. So if you're having a problem with nodes, processing overlaps and things like that and getting that error code, that's what it means. You've got modes piled on top of nodes, and they're preventing it from actually doing the job because they're intersecting. Right, so I'm going to select both. I've lined it up vertically and horizontally, and I'm going to try to subtract, and this time it's done it. We've not got the error code, and I'm going to make that a lightish grey, like so. So now we've got our, I'm going to close that down. So I know that's my first stencil that we've created now. So next we're going to be making our detailed stencil. So again, we're going to bring on the file, and notice I'm not changing any of the sizes. I'm just leaving everything as is. I'm just making sure that we're grouped, and I'm going to take a copy. So if we're going to use something, it's always a good idea to make a duplicate and leave it off to the side, because chances are we're going to need it again. If we don't, we can always delete it. So again, I'm just making this square fit, and I'm going to take a duplicate of the square, although I could pull another one of those on easily, but it's much easier if they're just there waiting for us. So I'm just adjusting the size a little bit. I think we can go just a little bit smaller, and then I'm going to select both, and I'm going to go on edit and line them up vertical and horizontal. Now what we're looking for is that square is behind, so we're going to make sure it's sent behind, and we're now going to try to process the overlap and subtract. And again, we've got that error message 92001, and I was expecting it because I did get this last time. All that means is that something is preventing us, one of these shapes, and we don't, no idea, no rhyme or reason. You might find it straight away the first time you're looking for it, or you might have to do each bit of the flower individually, but either or, it can be solved. So what we're going to do is just ungroup all of those parts, and we're going to just select systematically. I'm going to first of all make this a colour, so it's easier to see what's on top, and because it's the stencil, we're going to make it grey. And then this part, we're just going to go on our layers, and I'm just going to find that part that I've got highlighted in my layers, and it's there, and I'm just going to hide it for a minute while I just regroup these, because it'll be, actually I might be able to do them all without grouping them. That saves us a step, and we'll just make these a colour so that again they're easy to see. Go back on the layers, and we're going to unhide, toggle that one back on, the visibility for the square back on behind. So now we've got the flower stencil, if you will, on top that we want to cut out from the shape below. So I'm just going to systematically select a few at once, go on edit, subtract, process the overlap and subtract, and as long as it does it, we know that that's not one of the offending pieces, and we can send it to the back. Now I'm just going to play with a hunch and think that it's going to be one of these smaller ones. It may not be. We always need to select the grey one, or whatever colour you've made the base one as well. Here, so now we know that it's one of these that's causing the problem, so we'll systematically try to eliminate the error. So it wasn't the smallest one, which was a bit strange. I thought that was going to be the one. So I think it must be this one. So let's give that a try, and there's our error message. Now, once we find an error, we're cooking with gas, because hopefully then the rest of the file won't have any errors. So what we're doing is we're just using the zoom tool and zooming right in on that offending piece, if you will. Then I'm going to click on the selection tool and click once more, and we're going to expose the nodes. So we're just going to wait for the machine to catch up with itself, because we're zoomed in quite a lot and it's taking its sweet time to select the nodes. So maybe if we zoom out a little, it maybe will speed things up a little. We're maybe just a bit too overly zealous zoomed in. And at the minute, we're going to click that one, click again to expose the nodes. And I am going to need to zoom in, because I think I can see the problem, and it's right in this corner here. So again, I'm going to select that node. Oh, if that happens, all you need to do is just click and click once more, and that will bring the nodes back. And again, I think I'm not quite zoomed in enough, because I can't see what I'm selecting. So I'm just going to zoom into as much as I can and select again. Select the node, that one, and minus that one off. And there's another one underneath, and there's another one there. I think that's okay now. So we're going to display, zoom all objects to the mat, and then I'm just going to manually increase the size so we can see. We'll test to see if we've actually solved that one's problem, and we have. So now what we can do is send that to the back, the grey one again. And now we can try by selecting everything again to see if we can actually do the subtract. And it's done it now. So it was just that one piece that was causing the issue. Right, so in fact, if that's going to cause an issue, it means it's going to cause an issue on the next step. So I'm just going to undo that for a second, because we've actually selected that piece. I'm just going to go back to where we are. That's where we've got that piece there, and I'm going to command and duplicate it, because I can just slot that in onto my other file over there. And then I'm going to select everything and punch it out, and now we've got our detailed stencil there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to line this one up, this piece, directly on top of that piece that we see. So it's totally on top. Just going to need to zoom in a little. And this will just save me having to do the editing the nodes again, because I've already eliminated the node that was giving us an issue. And I'm just going to, first of all, arrange and send that piece to the back. And I'm going to click on the whole thing. I'm going to, sorry, I need to click on this bit, and we're going to go on break apart, if it'll let us. For some reason it's not letting us ungroup this one now. So let's display fit to mat and see what's happening, because I might have something else selected. So it's because the big one needs to be sent to the back, and then we should be able to get this one. Oops. So if we now hit that one, we should now be able to ungroup it, which means that we should be able to get that one, and it's left the other one behind. And I can now just move that one out of the way and regroup everything. Okay, and I can make it all a colour now and then, like so, and bring this one back in. So now we've got our detailed stencil, and we've got a working copy of this one, and I'm just going to make it a different colour, because that's just a bit too bright for me, for my eyes. That's a bit better. So now we've got, let's review. Just going to close the colours down and zoom in a little. So what we've actually got now, we've got our drawing file and our cutting file. So this is our drawing file, this is our cutting file. So like I said, you'd position these two directly on top of one another so that they go over to your machine together. And to do it perfectly, you remember you can align centre and middle, and that will put your drawing file directly on top of your cutting file, which is underneath. So I would get the machine to draw it and then cut it, and then you could put that straight onto a card if you wish. The next thing we've got is we've got our detailed stencil here, that we could cut all of those pieces out if we wanted to. Not really showing you at the best because I'm not lining it up very well, but we could cut all of those pieces out in different coloured papers and piece them straight back into that panel. So that's something else we can do. So I'm going to make a duplicate of that one, because that is something that can be paper pieced back into that stencil too. Now what we're going to do is we need to have that offset line like we have for this here. Remember, that's a perfect fit for that, barring a tiny overlap. End of part 1. We'll see you back here for part 2. Like, share and subscribe. Thanks.